Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yep.
Great.
I'm going to move over just a little bit, you guys are more centered space.
Paul.
Yep. See you.
Okay, you guys ready?
Yes, sir.
All right. You guys all ready? Yes, sir. All right. Good morning. My name is Jonathan Lenzner. I am the acting United States Attorney for the District of Maryland. It is a pleasure to be here this morning in Carroll County to announce serious federal charges that the United States has brought against Clayton McCoy. But first, I would like to introduce the members of our terrific law enforcement team here in Maryland who solved this case and who are assisting with the prosecution. First on my right, as you all know, Sheriff James DeWeese, State's Attorney Brian DiLeonardo, Fire Marshal Brian Garassi, County Commissioner Steve Wance, Tim Jones, who is the Special Agent in charge of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, and Paul Budlow is the Assistant U.S. Attorney in our office who is handling this prosecution. We are here today to announce that federal charges have been brought against Clayton Alexander McCoy of Ohio. These charges were brought in United States District Court for the District of Maryland, charging him with 2 federal offenses related to a bombing that occurred here in Carroll County on October 30th of last year. Mr. McCoy has been charged with transporting explosive devices with intent to injure, and he's been charged with using a destructive device in relation to a crime of violence. Mr. McCoy was arrested yesterday in Ohio, and he has an initial court appearance scheduled for tomorrow, Friday, in Ohio. At some point thereafter, we expect that he will be transported here to Maryland to stand trial. Let me remind you that these are allegations, and the defendant is presumed innocent until proven guilty in court. And what we say here today will be limited to what is in the public court record. As detailed in the affidavit to the criminal complaint that was unsealed just today, on October 30th of last year, a resident of Manchester was the victim of an explosion caused by a homemade bomb that was set by McCoy. The defendant traveled from Ohio to Maryland with the purpose and intent to unleash a dangerous explosive device on the victim. Now, the evidence suggests that the defendant targeted this victim because of the victim's relationship with a woman for whom McCoy had feelings. The victim suffered serious injuries, and we are all thankful that he is alive and that his condition is improving. The pipe bomb that McCoy left for the victim contained deadly shrapnel, and that shrapnel caused very serious injuries and damage to the victim's body as well as to the house that the victim was in when the bomb exploded. The victim was released from the hospital more than 2 weeks after the bomb exploded, which reflects not only the severity of his injuries, but also the lethalness of McCoy's bomb. Investigators from all of these agencies standing up here today jumped in quickly to solve this case, and they used a number of law enforcement tools and techniques to put it together very quickly. I would like to just add 2 quick points. First, this case was the product of terrific collaboration between multiple law enforcement agencies. The way in which investigators from the Carroll County Sheriff's Department, from the Office of the Fire Marshal, and for ATF all worked together to bring their own expertise to the common goal of solving this crime and holding someone accountable was very impressive, and I think should be an example for law enforcement to follow across this country. Anytime you have a case involving an explosive device that actually detonates, there are obviously challenges to proving a case like that. And so I think it's important to commend the investigators in this case for doing just that. I would also like to commend the team for the speed in which they put this case together and provided reassurance to the community. Many in this region may recall how frightening this incident was and in the days following. Cases involving explosions often take months, if even years, to solve. And we are all very grateful for the speed and deliberation by which this law enforcement team put this case together. Through methodical investigative work and through teamwork, everyone here on this law enforcement team succeeded in not only holding and apprehended a dangerous criminal, but also hopefully provided reassurance to a community that was justifiably alarmed after the bombing. So let me conclude by thanking the Carroll County Sheriff's Department, by thanking the Office of the Fire Marshal. I'd like to thank ATF, and I would like to thank State's Attorney Brian DiLeonardo, who has been a terrific partner to our office over the past few years. So with that, I will turn it over now to Sheriff DeWeese.
Good morning. So, U.S. Attorney Lenzner outlined a number of facts in the case, so I won't rehash what took place or go over specific details, but back in November, I believe it was November 1st, I briefed the public and the media during the early stages of the investigation, and every day since, the many agencies that you see represented here did not stop investigating, which ultimately concluded yesterday with the arrest of our suspect. I'm extremely proud of the cooperation between local, state, and federal agencies, including investigations, forensics, and counsel. The cooperation wasn't just confined to Maryland. I would be remiss if I did not thank Sheriff Scott Hildenbrand and the men and women of the Cuyahoga, I hope I'm saying that right, Scott, the Cuyahoga County, Ohio Sheriff's Office, and Chief Mark Purchase and the men and women of the Chesterland, Ohio Police Department for their help in this case. Although receiving regular briefings on the status of this case and now having the pleasure to announce that a suspect has been arrested and charged, none of the men standing with me today actually conducted the investigation or gathered the evidence to build this quality case. So with that, I'd like to thank the ATF agents out of the Baltimore field office. Tim Jones is here with me, and he's been a great partner in this investigation. Agents out of Cleveland and Detroit that came down to Ohio to assist. Certainly the U.S. Attorney's Office. Mr. Paul Budlow is behind me, has been providing counsel the entire time as this case went to the federal level. Maryland State Fire Marshal is here with us, but specifically Deputy Brian Quick with the Maryland State Fire Marshal's Office. Mr. Brian DiLeonardo and Melissa Hawkins-Smith with the Carroll County State's Attorney's Office, and the primary detectives assigned to this case with my officer, Deputy Sean O'Meara and Deputy Ashley Owens. And I have a number of staff here, and I don't have a large organization, and a case like this does tax us, and other cases are coming in, and my staff and the investigators with the Carroll County Sheriff's Office, I believe, are second to none, and I'm proud to lead that organization. And I've often told them if something happened to someone in my family, that's the group that I would come out and have investigated, hands down. All of these folks work cooperatively, bring this case to a safe and successful conclusion. And I feel it's important that the public understands that this sort of cooperation goes on daily, not just in my office, but throughout law enforcement in the United States. This is a great example of the level of cooperation it takes to solve a case like this from Maryland all the way out to Ohio, and I'm proud to be able to stand here and announce an arrest in this case and the level of cooperation that was here. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. DiLeonardo for a few comments, and I know you guys are going to have a lot of questions, so we'll be here to answer those. Brian?
Well, good morning. It is with very proud of the work that was done in this case. Very proud of the men and women who work for the agencies, for the men that you see behind that just did phenomenal work. There was certainly challenges and significant obstacles when you have a case, as was referenced, especially when you deal with an explosion. And each and every one of the agencies and the members of those agencies made very significant contributions to bring us to the point where we're standing here where we are today. As far as my office, we are certainly enjoy a great partnership with the U.S. Attorney's Office, and this is a good example of that. We will continue to support in any way that our office can, the U.S. Attorney, to ultimately bring this case to a complete resolution. Thank you.
Good.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tim Jones, and I'm the Special Agent in charge for the ATF Baltimore Field Division. Allow me to begin by saying thank you to Acting U.S. Attorney John Lenzner for holding this press conference today, and of course to Sheriff DeWeese from Carroll County for hosting it. This investigation highlights the best of law enforcement today, from the quick response on the day of the explosion to the tenacious investigative work performed by the investigators from the Carroll County Sheriff's Office, from the Office of the State Fire Marshal, and from ATF. These investigators collaborated to use forensics, technology, and most importantly, teamwork to leave no stone unturned to ensure justice for this victim. I'm very proud of our team for their hard work on this investigation, and I'm very grateful for the strong relationships that we have with our law enforcement partners standing with me here today. I will conclude by saying that without the help of our law enforcement partners in Ohio, the resolution of this case may not have been as successful as it is. So with that, I'd like to thank the ATF Columbus Field Division, our special response team that served the federal search and arrest warrant, and of course our ATF laboratory that completed the forensic examinations. Thank you.
I think we have maybe a couple minutes for some questions. I just want to, at the outset, remind you all that we're limited to what's in the public record at this point, which is the affidavit to the criminal complaint, which has a fair amount of information. It's actually a very well-written affidavit. But in terms of ongoing law enforcement operations and things like that, we're really not going to be able to say much in that area. But with that, if you have any questions, we'd be glad to field what we can.
Is there anyone who could just give me a good pronunciation of this Dagger or whatever this, is this an online game? Because it's not really, I don't need anything about the investigation, but just outside of that, what this game is, and is it ever in person, or what's its goal? I'm trying to figure out what the heck.
You know, I'm not qualified to answer that question, but is there anybody here who is?
They've been primarily, just like everybody else because of the pandemic, confined to doing things virtually. But I would say it's similar to what you would see like Civil War reenactment, but a specific period of time. They reenact those particular scenes and scenarios, but almost like a reenactment of a war-style group. But yes, they do meet, and they do have regions of the country, but right now it's been primarily virtually and online. And that's where our victim and our suspect knew each other through that particular group.
And just one other from me, following up. I don't know if you've seen the victim recently, but just...
I haven't personally, but I know that his condition is obviously improving daily, but the condition is good of the victim.
He still has rehab? I mean, is the family really relieved that we've just come to this point?
Sure, yeah.
For them over the last...
Yeah, it has, and I guess it would be for any community in that particular area up there. And as I briefed you guys back in November, the fear of, we were coming up on Christmas, and the fear of, packages showing up on front porches and exploding, we got a number of calls for those sort of things. So just for the community in general to work at the speed like these gentlemen said and come to this conclusion, was extremely important. But the family and the community up there is extremely relieved that we've come to this conclusion and an arrest. Yeah.
Is law enforcement able to share how they ultimately identified McCoy in Ohio?
So I'll leave it to the U.S. Attorney. I believe it was in the indictment. So he was identified by early on by the victim and the victim's girlfriend in the case, and so that's how we started with that individual. But as the U.S. Attorney said, forensics and digital evidence is the key to putting the case together and putting him down here in Maryland.
There's some specifics mentioned in the affidavit and in the news release that was given to us. Can somebody just walk through, I guess, what's already in there, like verbally tell us what happened as far as, it seems like there was some evidence that was found in the suspect's home that linked him to the crime. Can you just,
We can just give,
I guess, tell us what you can about the
well,
investigation.
I can just give, as detailed in the affidavit, law enforcement utilized a number of different investigative tools. So there was, they used a geofence warrant to identify devices that were in the area of the home where the bombing occurred at that time. And through that information, we're able to narrow down the pool of possible suspects. And then through other investigative work, for example, looking at footage from cameras from homes in the neighborhood, to once they identified McCoy and took custody of devices, we're able to search information and also do Google search warrants to see where he had searched for, getting a location for the home that he was going to go drop the bomb off on. So they corroborate that with interviews with witnesses, including an individual identifying the complaint as somebody who saw the package that morning, as well as his girlfriend. Putting that all together, they were able to conclusively identify the defendant, Mr. McCoy, as the person behind this bombing. And of course, we just need probable cause to charge someone with a federal crime, but we're not going to charge that case unless we're pretty confident we can prove it beyond a reasonable doubt, which is what we did here in this case, using all those different tools.
And to make it clear, he drove from Ohio with this package and dropped it off. It wasn't delivered by
Correct.
like UPS or US.
Yeah, the evidence suggests that he drove from Ohio and dropped it off on the front porch. And the affidavit to the complaint actually has an exhibit showing what appears to be his route from Pennsylvania into Maryland.
Okay. One final question. Was this elevated to a federal case because he was in Ohio and traveled across state lines with explosives? I was just curious how it became a federal case.
We often don't reveal too much about those kinds of internal law enforcement deliberations, but what I can tell you is that we have a terrific relationship with State's Attorney DiLeonardo and his office, and our goal is always to bring a case that can accomplish a number of goals. One is to hold accountable the person who's responsible, to bring restitution or level of comfort to the victim, to provide safety to the community and provide deterrence to other people who may attempt this sort of crime in the future. And so looking at all those factors and others, we worked very closely with Brian's office to figure out what would be the best charges to bring. And in this case, we decided collectively that we thought that the federal charges would accomplish those goals.
Well, real quick, just to follow up on that, although, we digitally and forensically gathered evidence, we had to corroborate that, and so that takes some legwork. So investigators, my investigators, the ATF, and so the State Fire Marshal basically traced the routes and stopped where we believed there were stopping points to identify that individual in order to put them there. So there was a lot of footwork that was done besides the forensics and the digital evidence that's done in order to corroborate everything.
And you mentioned the cameras. When he put that package on the porch, you guys had some sort of ring.
We didn't, but we were able to secure cameras throughout the neighborhood. Everybody's got, a camera device, and so that's where the footwork comes in, knocking on doors, asking people if they have that sort of footage, and then trying to capture it if we could. And we felt early on, I think I briefed you guys, that we believed that the package was not delivered by UPS, FedEx, or a traditional party, but based on what we learned from the package, it probably had to be dropped off by a third party delicately or by the individual that was seeking to do harm.
There was mention of a reward the last time you briefed us. Was that given to anyone?
No, it was not, but thanks for mentioning that. Yeah, I didn't bring my checkbook with me. Anything else? Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.